This will get some of you a little upset just thinking about it. Non-paying clients and customers. How can you avoid being stiffed, being ignored, and people not paying you what you are owed? Whew. As I say it, I'm already feeling a little bit of that anger because there's nothing that could be more frustrating or more annoying or more just, not just frustrating, just angering than not being paid when you have earned what you're supposed to have and you don't get it because for whatever reason, you have a non-paying client or customer. And this, again, I want to be very clear that I don't have all the answers to this because it's happened to me recently. It's probably happened to you. As a matter of fact, if you're watching in replay or live, let me know if you've ever been the victim of a non-paying client, not being paid for a gig, for a service, whatever it is. If this has been you, someone that said, oh, I'll get it to you, and they never reach out, I promise you, you're not alone. And again, why am I sharing this now? One, because it came up in conversation and it was like super, like it just hit home. It's like, wow, like this is literally so many of our stories that we don't share often because it's number one. Some of us don't want to make other people feel bad if they are the ones that owe us money. Some of us are just mad and we don't know how to deal with it. Some of us, like I said, it's more embarrassment both for the person and for ourselves. Like we don't like to talk about money, period. So a lot of times we do not, or what happens is we'll flame that person out on social media if they owe us money, and that may not be the best way to do it either. But we're lashing out. We're saying such and such did not pay me. Do not hire them. We're trying to warn our friends. There's so many elements to not being paid as a client, or as a creative by your clients. But first, let's get into this first. Let's talk about the fact that each one of us as creative, whether it's professional, whatever it is, if you're asking for payment, you're basically saying you're a professional. Each one of us has to realize that the very fact that we are asking for payment shows that we are in business, and in business, you are always running the risk and dealing with the risk of non-payment. It's why so many corporations and big companies basically have insurance for non-payment. When you get those collections letters and things like that, I mean, that's literally like them saying like, okay, we're not going to get paid, so we'll pay somebody else. We'll sell the debt and they will try to get paid, but we are not going to deal with it. So business involves the risk of not being paid and dealing with cash flow issues and receivables and all that stuff. Creatives, I know oftentimes we don't like to think in these terms because it feels like, oh my gosh, like I'm not a business person. I don't have to deal with all these collections and things like that. Like I don't want to deal with all that. But let's be honest, if you are not paid, essentially you become a collections agent. If you are trying to text someone and say, hey, this wasn't paid, this invoice wasn't paid, you are now in collections. So all of us creatives, sorry, if you don't get paid right up front and you have to remind your client, hey, this is due, or you didn't pay this, or you didn't pay that, or you didn't get it up front, or whatever reason, you are now in collections. You are a collections agent. So not a good feeling because many of us don't like collections and we don't like collections agents, or we don't like to be reminded until we're the ones that are owed money. And then we want to be as clear as possible. Like, hey, this is due. This is owed. We're not going to do the crazy things where they say people come and like, harass you and take your car. Well, I don't know. Maybe some people are in that situation where they actually have to do repossessions and stuff. But I've seen too many Facebook posts where there are creators, really, really well-known creators, really, really established business savvy creatives who are posting that, hey, such and such didn't pay me. Hey, watch out for this. This person isn't getting paid. Great to see you, my friend Simony. Our ambassador is in the house. So good to see you. So yeah, we're talking about the ever-present problem of not getting paid. This is going to be deep, and I hope everyone else that's watching is kind of like doing a sigh of, okay, like it's not just me. Because I think all of us have gone through it in any way, shape, or form. Maybe you're in this situation where you are not yet accepting payment for your creative work. Maybe you are still afraid to charge and you're like, okay, how do I even go about this? And now you're telling me I got to worry about people not paying me. Well, we're going to help you avoid that with some of these tips we're giving right now, because this is helping me to deal with this right at this very moment, the things I'm about to tell you. But the first thing I want to be very clear about is, yes, it happens. Yes, companies all are already thinking, what happens if this person doesn't pay? What's our recourse? They already have these agencies and collections and things like that. So basically, it needs to be kind of like part of your mindset going in, that you're going to have processes in place that protect you in cases of non-payment, or allow you to have these kind of stipulations where that isn't even a possibility, that you don't even do the work until you've been paid. And of course, that involves prepayment, that involves your terms, that involves how you set up your agreements so that you already have your money in hand before you even do the work. That, of course, is the best of all possible situations. But that's not always the case for many other creative things, including music. Like, I have been a musician for 30 years. I can tell you very rarely, unfortunately, very rarely can I say, even for most of those years, that I got paid in advance. Most of the time, it was either at the gig, after the gig, or later, where it was like a month or 2 months or 1 month or 2 weeks or whatever. And that's, again, I'm being very transparent there. This is not the way I would want it to be, but it's the way I think most of us understand it. Most of us, even though we should be paid up front, we should be paid before the work is done, just like you pay before you get, your hamburger or whatever. Like, you pay first and then you get your sandwich. It should be that way with most creative work, but it's not. A lot of work is done on spec, which is where you do the samples and you send it over free and then you get it. We talked about this a lot in episode 323, with Tuesday, our latest episode, about doing free work. When is it worth it to do free work? When is it not? So that is available, or that's available. That is a situation that many of us have to deal with. Here is where I think what I am doing now is helping me specifically in this area of not being paid. One is kind of like goes with our question that we talked about last week, where we talked about what to ask before you get booked. It is so important to have it clear before you get booked. When is the payment expected? What is the amount that is expected? How will it be paid? Because if you have those things in hand and you've already discussed it, you've already gotten a foot into avoiding not being paid. Because so many times we go into these performances or gigs or whatever, and then after the fact, we're like, oh gosh, wait, are they going to send it today or tomorrow? Is it going to be check or is it going to be card? And we don't say up front the method and understanding when we can expect it and having all those things in place in advance. When it's not done in advance, we are basically saying to anyone, hey, yeah, you can make it up as you go along. It is very hard for me to say to many of you gig workers who are doing gigs like during the week and you're doing the hotel and the restaurant circuit. It's very hard for me to say to you, okay, you got to stipulate like when that money comes, because you feel like you have to follow through with whatever the client or the hotel or whatever the restaurant already set up. But I want you to kind of change that narrative a little bit. Maybe you still have to go the way they say it, but you do not have to assume it has to stay that way, especially if you become an established performer in that venue. You can say, hey, from now on, since I'm here, I would like to know that my check or my whatever is ready when I begin, or my check is ready here or there or whatever your specific desires are. It's so important to start to voice it. Does it mean that every corporation is going to change their payment situation for you? No. But you make it clear that this is the expectation, and you'd be surprised how many people are willing to go along with it, because they necessarily don't want all the paperwork as well. If you're going to make this smoother and easier for them, and you want to have this particular thing done up front, and they don't have to worry about it, it can be a win for them as well. So don't be afraid to bring up to clients, hey, the best way for us to handle this is to pay me up front so you don't have to think about it later. I will offer, if it's revisions and things like that, I will offer you revision after revision if that helps you, in terms of like explaining this to people. But I would say 9 times out of 10, just ask for it up front. Just say, this is when I expect to be paid before I give the service. That can eliminate so much of that. Because again, people balk at that. They're most likely, I'm not going to say they're not going to pay, but they're already kind of signaling that the payment is on the backside of their priority list. You want the payment to be on the front side of their priority list so that they are not waiting to the end of the night of the performance or whatever and like, oh, how am I going to pay this? Nope. Make sure that discussion is held up front. Here's another thing that I'm doing that's really helping with the whole avoiding non-payment. And that is, this is going to be controversial, but I am very, very, very much leaning away from and leaving the electronic payments of Zelle and Cash App. Why do I say you shouldn't be accepting Cash App or Zelle for your payments? Here's why. Because even though it is extremely convenient for someone to say, oh, I'm going to Zelle you the money, I'm going to just go in my account and Zelle you the money. The reason why I feel that is becoming a very slippery slope for us as creatives is because, once again, it is not how businesses generally do their work, how businesses run their processes, how businesses generally aren't saying, yeah, just Zelle me your FPL. Like, no, they're not FPL, by the way, being here. It's Florida Power and Light. So don't Zelle your electric bill. We don't Zelle our car payments most of the time. Like, most of that is done through more official channels. And I am leaning toward, in my own business, telling people I accept this payment and this payment and this payment. And by being very direct in the messaging of how I accept my payment, is helping me to make clear that just sending me a Zelle is not going to be the way that I conduct my business. It's not going to be just, oh, just send me this little tap of a button. There's going to be a process you follow. And when you follow the process and my invoice is satisfied, that is when the work will be done or continued or whatever, or the invoice paid. It's not just a tap of a button and kind of like a just, oh, done, sent it off and whatever. Like, I know that, again, this might be, again, controversial, but I feel the messaging of Zelles and Cash App is out of sight, out of mind. You pay it, you don't think about it, it's done. I want my clients and the people that I serve to be highly aware of my system, highly aware of my value. And if I need to make payment, a little bit more of a step-by-step process so that it's clear that this is a business that you're working with and not just a freelance kind of, oh, operation, I'll just sell you. No, I want there to be a very clear system, and that system for me is involving bill.com. It is involving setting up my invoices. It's involving being paid directly through that invoice because, again, I think I want to empower you as a creative to say to someone, this is how I want to be paid. When I go to a restaurant, they tell me what cards they accept. When I go to FPL or go to my car payment or whatever, they tell me you can pay this way, this way, this way, this way. What I think freelancers get mistaken is say when they go to the client says, well, I pay this way, this way, this way. And we assume we have to accept that. But if you want my services, you also have to accept the way that I want to be compensated. And so if I want to have a check, then don't hire me unless you're willing to give me a check. If I want to be paid by credit card and or debit card and or cashier's check or whatever, I determine that, not the client. And so I think avoiding non-paying clients includes being very clear about your messaging that there's a process and I expect this from the get-go for you to follow this. And if you don't follow it, well, I'm already kind of like, that gives me a key. You're kind of just doing this out of convenience and there's a higher risk of you not paying me. So that is my take on that. I really do feel, and if I'm off, and if anybody's watching live or you're watching on replay, and you're feeling like, no, I don't agree with that, let me know. I'm just telling you how I'm flowing with this, because what I'm seeing is the more I talk about this is how I want to be paid, the less likely someone can come up and say, oh, I forgot this is just like, and every time that I'm not clear about how I'm going to be paid and being kind of very process oriented and system oriented is when I get the non-paying customer. It's when someone's like, oh, I forgot, then you slip through the cracks, or I'll get to you this week or that week. All of these things need to be discussed up front, and most likely, again, if possible, we can have that money up front as well. So if that's helpful, please let me know, because I want to know that this specific issue is being addressed in our community and that we're helping you guys to avoid these, I didn't get paid, oh my gosh, what happened? I did the gig and it's been 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. And that, we don't want to hear about that in our creative community. We want to help you solve that problem. And like I said, I do feel very strongly that we have to change our messaging, because whatever's being perceived, however your payment process is being perceived, is what actually is happening. Not the way you're saying it, the way it's being perceived. So if you're not being paid, someone is perceiving that you're going to survive or you're going to be fine without being paid. And that is not the way we want to conduct our creative career. My friend, thank you for watching this episode. If that blessed you, you got to make sure that you stay connected with this community and this channel so that you can get more where that came from. We're sharing great interviews, tactics, strategies, mindsets, lifestyle choices, everything is going to help you become a totally confident creative. And don't miss an episode of the God and Gig Show. If you are staying connected to our channel, you'll be able to find us anytime we release new episodes. And you can check out some of our archives of almost 200 episodes now that we've shared over the last few years. Make sure you check out one of the suggestions right now, because it's probably perfect for you to continue to develop as a creative. And continue to stay connected with us, because we're here to help you become the creative that God created you to be. We'll see you in the next episode.